Good afternoon and welcome. I'm really pleased to be here today with the candidates who are unopposed for District 6-3 in Burlington's Old North End. So we have our friends here who are going to introduce themselves, and we're also going to take your calls at 862-3966. We have a half an hour for some questions and discussion. Jill, please introduce yourself and tell us why you're running.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for putting on these forums. I think it's really important, even with people who don't have opposition, to be able to have a conversation about what we care about and what we're working on. So thank you. Thank you, Channel 17. So my name is Jill Krowinski. I represent the Old North End in downtown Burlington with Curt McCormack. And I'm running because I feel strongly about creating a Vermont that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. A Vermont where families and communities can thrive and where the Vermont dream is accessible to everyone. And as I meet with people in our district, when I'm at Barrio or the dog park or the farmer's market, what I'm hearing from people is that they want us to continue to working on policies like paid family leave, like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and to do what we can to help women in the workplace, especially with programs with workforce development and equal pay. So that's what's motivating me to run again for re-election. And I'll also add that this past legislative session, we passed a monumental bill around gun violence prevention measures that really did a lot to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people in our state. And going through that process, especially with the students who were involved and so engaged, was just really inspiring to me. And those students are still involved and still want to be part of the process. And I think right now, given what's happening in our country and in Washington, and we're realizing what's at stake for our country and our state and why these elections are so important, I think for me, it's just so motivating and inspiring to be able to continue that dialogue with them and work with them and go back to the State House to be a mentor and to make sure that we're doing everything to support the next generation. So that's why I'm running again.
Thank you so much. Curt McCormack, tell us why you are running for re-election. This is actually, what term is this for you, Jill, first?
This will be my fourth. And I was appointed at halfway through.
That's
so
right. That's right.
2012 is when I was appointed.
And Curt, in this go-around.
Yeah, Jill and I actually ran together back then in 2012.
Got it.
So, yeah, I have to think again. I guess it will be our fourth term. And I also served in the legislature representing Rutland for 6.5 terms in the 1980s and 1990s. And I guess that's a good segue to one of the reasons I'm running again, is I'm so comfortable, and I feel like I really have found my niche and my place in this world as representing this district in the legislature, because this district is a great district. It's so, sounding like Donald Trump on it. It's the greatest district that ever was. But for me, it really is, and that's because one reason I stay involved in politics, and another reason I keep running for the legislature, is that I still cannot believe that we are not taking climate change more seriously. And other environmental issues drive my politics as well, but mainly and now it's that one. And this district inherently are leaders, even those that may not think about the environment or climate or even care about it, by virtue of the fact that they live here. I did a study of this district last year to just verify and document things that are obvious. But the data was amazing. So the percentage of families, households, I shouldn't say families, households in this district that don't even have an automobile is 32%. Rivals New York City. The rest of the state is like between 6 and 7%. The country is about 6 to 7%. But this district is 32%. Far more people walk to work in this district, far more people take bicycles to work in this district, and more people take transit. in this district. This district uses less energy per household in heating their homes. We use electricity, something like 31% less electricity. Anybody interested, go to my website or call me, and I'd be happy to. I love to share this study with other people. So I represent those points of view, and I think that's the leadership that's needed in climate change. Is, we can fight about divesting in oil companies and that sort of thing. We can fight about the carbon tax, and to me, those things are nowhere near as important as using energy much more wisely, stop wasting it, and for us to live in communities again, like here in Burlington. So that's why I'm running.
Well, and that's a good segue to one of our questions, which is how can Vermont turn climate change to its advantage? And it's so I wonder maybe you could address that question, building on what you just said.
Yes. Well, and to keep on that for just a moment longer, we passed some good legislation, I think 3 years ago now, that made it very difficult to develop in sprawl anymore. And when that hit the streets, when it was implemented, even some of Jill's and my colleagues who voted for it didn't realize how good it was, but to them it wasn't so good because they said, well, I just heard from this car dealer who can't build out on Route 7 now. And like, no, we want car dealers and everything else clustered in town, and we especially want people living in town again. And people want to do it. Millennials are moving into town and cities. That's nothing new. They've been doing it for years. And now my generation is doing it, following them. People want to be in town, but we need to make development happen in town and stop the sprawl. So even today, we find ourselves, we have to go out to the mall here in Burlington because we're so suburbanized now. So that's got to be reversed, and we need to continue working on that. And then, as I said, saving energy. There's so many things we can do, and I'm not talking about the individual thinking, okay, what can I do? Well, that's good also, but the state can institutionalize conservation. How? Like the bills that we passed the last 2 years on energy efficiency standards on appliances and equipment. We passed 2 really good bills that, again, the public will hardly even notice it. But you may notice that your electric bills actually are less than they used to be. People our age know that. It's a smaller amount. Why? One of the reasons is that the federal government has passed energy efficiency standards for appliances. The refrigerator you buy today, even if it's not an Energy Star, uses 3 times less energy than the same refrigerator did just 25 years ago.
Okay.
So Vermont is picking those up, and we are leading the country in that. We have the most advanced, and again, it'll be nothing anybody will hardly notice it. They are all cost effective, all the appliances, and we are already influencing the federal government, even this government, who is threatening to take some of the standards away. And Vermont's first bill said, we will we will pick up any standard that the feds drop will become a state standard. We never had to do it because the feds said, all right, and they finally stopped threatening them.
Okay.
So that's one of the many things we can do.
Curt's done a great job in being a leader on these energy efficiency bills, and I think that's just one example of what we can do in Vermont, not only to be leaders in the nation, to push for standards that are stronger and better across our country, but what we can do locally to make a difference in this literally in this climate. It wasn't that long ago that I heard the statistic that we spend $2 billion in Vermont on fossil fuel. Is that right? $2 billion. And that money largely goes out of state. And so I think what we need to be focused on is how can we create more clean, renewable energy in our state that keeps those dollars local, that creates jobs, it spurs innovation, and it helps our economy. And so when we start looking at programs about weatherization and continuing to make investments in weatherization in our homes, looking at doing more to create more access to heat pumps, electric vehicles, we have so much opportunity, I think, in transportation. And so those are areas that we'll be continuing to look at this legislative session. But I do think that we have just this responsibility, given what's happening in Washington, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be proactive and push back on some of the really bad policies that deal with climate out of Washington.
So one of the questions we have has to do with Vermont's economic outlook, which is described as not being great. The governor is quite concerned about it. You know, business magazines say that we're really lagging and that our growth is expected to lag behind the rest of the country. So the first question I have for you, Jill, is do you agree with that assessment? And then can you talk about how some of these issues that you support that are really important for you, like family leave, maybe contribute to a positive economy as opposed to being a drain, which I think many people would argue.
Right. Well, Lauren, there's so many studies and reports out there that say one thing or another. For every negative article, we can find a positive article. So what I know are the numbers that I get from our Joint Fiscal Office, and that's what I work off of. And what we're seeing is an opportunity here for us to pass legislation and implement legislation like paid family leave that helps families get ahead. You know, when you have people who are having to choose between their paycheck and staying home after giving birth because they don't have access to a paid family leave policy, when you think of people who are having to make the decision whether to go part-time to take care, so they can take care of a family member who's really sick, I mean, I think it's unacceptable that there are people who are having to use their lunch break to go and get chemo treatment. That's not Vermont. That doesn't reflect our values, and that's why I think if we can get this paid family leave policy passed again this upcoming session and get it to the governor's desk, we need that policy in Vermont. I think not only does it help a lot of Vermonters when it comes to growing their families, I think it recruits people to come to our state. When we're talking about what policies we can pass where people are looking for a new job and a great place to live, you know, we have a great reputation of a really high quality of life. If we can talk about being one of the only states, I think 7, that offer something like this to families, I think that it helps us recruit more people to our state. And I think it also helps in some of our issues around childcare. You know, trying to find access to high quality infant care in our state is really hard and it's really expensive. So even 12 weeks together, I believe, makes a difference for families. So like I said, we got to focus on paid family leave. We got to focus on raising the minimum wage, and also look at other policies to help with equal pay and workforce development for women.
So let me just ask you a quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
And that is, what about the impact on businesses who need to pay and subsidize these benefits?
So the policy that we passed, the paid family leave bill, did not have an employer contribution. It was only an employee contribution. And when I talk to small businesses about this bill, what they say consistently, the theme I hear is we're trying to compete with these really big businesses in town that offer all of these benefits, like paid family leave and lots of vacation time, and they can't compete. They just can't. So if this was implemented, it would help actually level the playing field for small businesses when it comes to benefits like paid leave. We also have done work around pension and ensuring that we can create a statewide pension program for people for retirement. A better way to put it would be retirement, and that's something that Beth Pierce has been working really hard on, and we did pass. And so I think paid family leave and retirement, those are 2 things that can really help make a difference for families.
Thank you. Kurt, what's your view of Vermont's economic situation? Do you think it's dire, and do you, what is your view about how to promote value and growth in the state?
Well, first I'd like to thank you for the questions that you sent us, and the one on the economy. I was looking for the word economic growth, and it wasn't in there. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate that. So in general, we are stuck in an economic model in this country that has to grow. It has to, otherwise it's not healthy, and that's true. And that has to change. And now, do I have any legislation about how to do that? No. But although I did get a resolution through last year to honor the Center for the Advancement of the Steady State Economy. So your question almost implied that by not mentioning growth. But again, we are stuck in such an economic model in this world, really, in the global economy, and especially in this country. I believe in a district like ours, one can say without getting killed that they actually think we need a steady state economy instead of a growth economy.
And can you describe what that means?
Yes, it means that the total size of the economy becomes roughly stable, stops growing, doesn't depress and doesn't grow. And the idea is because the planet cannot afford an economy and the population number that's constantly growing. You know, where's it going to wind up? What's going to happen in the end? What's happening now? I mean, it's not sustainable now. It never was. And so it's going to become less sustainable as economies grow and as populations grow. And more people want that growth.
So how do you see that playing out in Vermont?
Basically, well, again, it's the premise I'm giving to, and thanking you for your question. Without any problem, I can answer your question. Whereas if you had said growth, I always struggle with that because I do not think ultimately we want our economy to grow. Having said that, at this point we do in our state because it's the model we're stuck in. So we have to do what we can to change that. And it's basically a sharing of the economy so that of course we should have a minimum wage that's much higher, and Jill and I worked really hard last year on the $15 minimum wage. And we had 50 co-sponsors of the legislation, and we passed it. The only compromise made on our original bill went to 6 years from 5 years. So of course we need a much higher minimum wage. And I also think we don't need to have super wealth anymore. And I think one way to address that in Vermont, and it's one thing I'm just looking into now, because I'm also on the UVM Board of Trustees, and we are looking now to hire a new president. And their salaries are, not what most people make. As a matter of fact, they're not what most people who work at the school make. And so in that capacity, I'm going to be looking at a salary ratio requirement. That is that, and I haven't decided on the number that I'll be proposing yet. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I'll be proposing it soon. But it's something to start talking about because there's no question in my mind things like that will be the case in 10 or 20 years. So as Barack Obama would sometimes say, which side of history do you want to be on? Because history will look back to when this started and who fought it and why, and for so many years it was awful. Raising minimum wage, I think the same thing. So you asked Jill, what about small businesses? I think that when you have better benefits, and I think you maybe asked it the opposite. You had said the employers covering the benefits. It's the state that covers the benefits when the employee doesn't make enough money, which I think was the point you were making. And I think Bernie Sanders' proposed legislation is great. Again, probably not going to happen anytime soon, but we need to start talking about that, which is that employers that underpay and can simply be defined by, do they need benefits? If you qualify for benefits, then you're underpaid if you work full time, right? So same thing. I think the higher salaries need to be brought down and the lower salaries up and have required ratios.
So let me just ask, I'm going to just move on to another question,
Yes.
which is water quality, and how do we increase funding to clean up Vermont lakes and rivers? Curt?
I'm going to answer that by telling you quickly about a conversation I had with a Republican friend who I won't name at the end of a vote that we had last year when we did not have enough votes to put more money into water quality. I don't even remember what tax we were raising. It was minor increase. It was no big deal, hardly noticeable, but the governor had taken that stand, which I think was very unfortunate. And I think actually out of his character. I was surprised he did it in his big speech when he said, he will not support any increase in anything, any fees or
Not
taxes.
even a fee. Right.
Not even a fee. And I remember when George H. Bush did that, it was a mistake because he did the right thing a few years later by supporting the raising of taxes, and then he got voted out of office because the Democrats were able to make a liar out of him. Scott wasn't going to do that. He wasn't going to lie, so he stuck to it. I asked the Republican friend, I said, you guys get to stand up with us and say you support water quality, and you don't like what's happening to Lake Champlain, and you don't like that we haven't finished our combined sewer overflow program yet, and you don't like what's happening with agriculture and water pollution, and you want to do something about it. You get to say that, as we do, and where are you when it comes to paying for it? If you don't like this package, give us one. I didn't see any amendments out there, because I probably would have voted for any of them to improve the water quality of the state, and I think that's what the whole state would support. So what taxes, I don't know. The parcel fee was fine with me on property. Probably the best one would be a surcharge on the income tax, only on the wealthy. They're so undertaxed now. You know what I mean? So which idea, who knows, and Ways and Means will bring out something that's passable, but hopefully this time Republicans will vote for it.
So Jill, what's your view on solving the funding problem for Clean Lakes? And
Well, I'll say that I think voters will determine what happens on water quality issues in November, right? Because, as Curt said, Governor Scott refuses to sign any bill that has a new or raised tax or fee in it. And in order to really tackle this issue around water quality and take it seriously, it needs a dedicated funding source. And so I will make my plea to the people of Vermont that if you want to see results and you want us to make investments, long-term investments in clean water, vote for candidates who support investing in clean water, because we're going to be back to right where we were with debating some sort of minuscule change in revenue to tackle this problem, and it's not going to work. I will say that one of the things that we've been working on in our capital budget is making more room for projects that are shovel ready to get those projects going and off the ground. I think that's really important. I think that we should...
Would water quality be one of those examples?
Yes. So these projects in the budget are dedicated to shovel-ready projects to help with clean water across the state. And some other conversations we've been having that are broader than just how to fund, but how can we prevent? What are we doing right now to clean up our lakes and streams and the pollution that's in it? I think the concern that we've been seeing with PFOA and Bennington and other parts of the state, the governor vetoed a bill that would help protect people in those situations when faced with those toxic chemicals. And it's all around us. Like even living in the Old North End, we've been dealing with an issue with some contaminated soil because of a dry cleaning facility. So I think that in order to make sure we're doing everything we can to help families and to protect public health and the economy, we have to look at this at all angles. So I think a funding source, a long-term funding source, is important, but I think tackling it from these other angles too is really critical if we're going to take this seriously.
So we have about 5 minutes left. So you you could answer any one of those questions that you want.
well, I'll say this. I really there's one of the questions that you talked about was, what's an idea that you've heard from a constituent that you really like? And I think on this water quality issue, Curt and I sat down with a constituent who cares a lot about water quality, and that's his line of work. And he was talking about how there are these chemicals that are part of driveways when they're creating driveways. And there's this certain type of chemical that's still being used, and it's used in parking lots. And this chemical ends up getting in the lake, and it's a problem. So it was just it was lovely because there was this great connection to be like, we're like, what's the problem we need to solve? When we're talking about solving the clean water problem, what can we do on the prevention side of things? And here is one great example of one clear thing we could do. And Curt and I, we're going to work on that bill, and we're going to get it introduced, and we're going to talk and build a coalition around it. And it was because of that conversation with a constituent. And that's what I love about being in the House, because we're able just to have these conversations, like literally at Barrio, coming up with these ideas from people in the community about how we can make our environment better. So that's what I'm happy to share and answer.
So what's the best idea you've heard on the campaign trail?
That might be it, but well, I don't know. It's more than an idea. We'll have a bond question, which I'd like to make a pitch for, speaking of water quality, to improve our infrastructure here and get more of the combined sewer overflow separated, so that we stop mixing stormwater with sewage water and dumping and flooding the plants, and then that's how we have the problems in the summer in the lake. And believe me, we're doing what we can to lower property taxes, and this is going to raise them a little bit, but I think Burlingtonians have always voted for this kind of infrastructure, even though we don't like our property taxes. When it comes to property taxes, the thing to change is to stop paying for education with property taxes. That's the problem. There's probably no better way to do the sewer plants. And don't forget, when we improve our sewer plants, you actually pay for that on your water bill.
So can you just clarify, so there's a ballot question in Burlington?
Yes.
Just
it's a bond issue.
It's a bond issue. Just say one more time what it is for.
Well, it's kind of technical, so I don't want to make any mistakes about it, but it's to make the improvements that we haven't made yet. It's not that anything was done incorrectly. We put a lot of money into combined sewer overflow years ago. Yep. I was a part of that because I chaired the Natural Resource and Energy and representing Rutland, even though most of the money came here, because that's where it was needed. And but we never did finish the job. We did the worst things first. So it's to separate stormwater
from wastewater.
From wastewater.
Got it.
Yep. And it'll be paid for again on your water bill, and that makes sense. The more water you use, that means the more you're discharging, and the more you think you might want to pay for.
Do you have a 30-second closing comment?
Yes, since I touched on it, because I really want this bond issue to pass. I believe it will. But the thing to put pressure on us, I think, with our property taxes are so high. Even Act 60, whenever that was, I wasn't there then, but I believe a golden opportunity was not taken advantage of, and that is, we should be paying for education on the income tax, not on the property tax. I say all of it, not just a little piece, not just income incentivizing, but rather a whole new funding system where we pay for schools on the income tax.
Okay, thank you so much, Curt McCormack.
Well, I would just like to say that again, I'm running for re-election because I want a Vermont that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. And so I really welcome any feedback and any questions from constituents to talk about this upcoming session and what they want us to work on. I pledge that I will continue to work hard for this district, and I really hope that I can count on your support on November 6th. And so with your help, we can get paid family leave back and passed, minimum wage passed. We can continue to fight for legislation that helps women and families thrive. So I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you so much. So we've been speaking with Jill Krowinski and Curt McCormack, who are the current representatives, the incumbents, and running for re-election in Burlington's District 6-3. That's the Old North End. Don't forget, Election Day is the 6th of November. You have opportunities to vote early, and certainly don't forget to vote by November 6th. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned here on Channel 17 for more coverage of general elections 2018.